Hello, hello. Thank you for joining me for another episode on my YouTube channel. I appreciate your patience with me and my sporadic posts. Nonetheless, we are here. Let us get right into the day's topic. So, as you can see on the whiteboard, how many gods do you worship? The reason I bring this topic up is because after my two posts ago rather, when I talked about the Lambo is a rental, I gave the story of Wes Watson and how this online figure inspired me, motivated me to do just that much better with my life. It's funny. During the pandemic, a lot of people just came out of the woodwork. I've said we had Wes Watson, we had figures like Andrew Tate, figures like Hamza, all of these people who in 2026, we kind of look at them as though they're jokes. But if you were a young man back in 2021, 22, these figures kind of changed our lives. Of course, now we can read the news and say Andrew Tate is being accused of human trafficking, right? Wes Watson is being accused of fraudulently making his wealth. Pick the name. Hamza is being accused of using PEDs. Pick the name. In 2026, all these figures are either simply jokes or implicated in criminal activity. But in 2020, 21, 22, these same people made a lot of young men change their lives for the better. Now, most people today can deny this. We can say, no, I never really respected those guys. I didn't care. I was just watching a bunch of YouTube videos. I stumbled upon this guy. He says something I like to hear, and I followed suit. But after listening to that last episode, one of my friends reached out to me. He said like how we started talking about Wes Watson. And my friend was telling me at the time he was in a long distance relationship. He was living in a small town. He was all alone. His girlfriend was living in a big city. And he was feeling depressed. He was feeling lonely. He was feeling like his job wasn't doing anything for him. But then one day, I sent him a Wes Watson video. And he said he was in the bathtub just taking a bath, relaxing. And he popped up, he turned on the video, started watching, and he realized, the tough love with which Wes Watson spoke made him realize in that moment while he was naked in the bathtub, moaning and whining about how miserable he is, he realized after listening to this man that I am being a bitch. And he stopped complaining. He stopped texting me about how lonely he is, how depressed he is. He started working out. He started working on his graphic design dreams. He started finding ways to make money. All because of videos from this guy who in 2026 is being accused of fraudulently making most of his wealth. So the question I asked is, how many gods do you worship? In 2020-22, Oscar might have told you, I have many gods, small g. Wes Watson was a god. Andrew Tate was a god. Hamza was another god. All of these people who seemed to have this magnificent life, who seemed to have life figured out. They were disciplined, they were fit, they were rich. They seemed to have everything figured out. But then we pull back. Time gives us room to really observe an individual, to really pay attention to the details. And what we see is that they didn't have everything figured out. They had some things really, really dialed in. They were just extremely focused in some areas to the point of ignoring everything else. Now, you remember I talked about the 7 life areas a few episodes back. Now, imagine this. Imagine if I today decide money is one of the 7 life areas, I think, or rather your career, just making income. If I decide I'm going to ignore my intimate relationships, I'm going to ignore my physical health, I'm going to ignore, my hobbies and solely focus on making money, it is highly likely that in a couple of years, I might be extremely rich. All I need to do is sacrifice most of everything else. Now, when someone says that on YouTube, it makes sense. Just sacrifice most of everything else and focus on making money, and you'll make money. And as a young man, I'm not young anymore, but when I was young and I heard that, it sounded correct. That's what one needs to do. But if I'm to look at all of these figures who sacrificed everything for the sake of money, and I see how their lives turned out, I end up thinking that I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy. Now, I'm not rich. I'm not especially fit. I'm not especially intelligent. My focus is spread across the 7 areas of my life. It seems to me as though nothing gets more importance than others. Maybe one might argue, well, Oscar, you seem to be really into the gym. Okay, you really seem to be really into writing. Okay, but I would argue from my point of view, the focus is spread evenly. Now, the problem with having the focus spread evenly is that I don't get to enjoy the fullest extent, the fullest potential of each of these areas. Maybe I never will. But here's the thing. As far as I'm concerned, I get to taste the best of multiple areas of life. I might never see Greece, I might never be on a private jet, I might never, whatever the case may be. And those people, those small gods that we once looked up to, that maybe some of us still look up to today, please notice that they don't have life figured out. They are just like you and me. They just chose to put extra effort in some areas. They are just men. They also bleed. There is only one God that deserves your worship. And you won't be seeing him on screen anytime soon. Think about that before you start counting your gods.